Welcome back to Car Coach Reports for episode 2 of our podcast. I'm Paul Fix.
I'm Lauren Fix.
And today we are talking about California and its heinous overreach of its abuse of laws, rules, and mandates related to the automotive industry and how it could spell disaster and how it could be fixed.
Well, this is actually a lot more to unpackage than just California. So if you live in another state and you're like, doesn't affect me. Oh, yeah, it does. And this is what we're talking about. It's more than overreach. And just to qualify, the Constitution says that each state makes their own rules for that state. It does not allow one state, any state, Iowa, Rhode Island, any little state, to tell the rules for all the other states. But California has, we'll say, commandeered that power.
Well, that was given to them.
Yes.
They kind of took it at first, and then it was given more to them. And we've talked a little bit about this on the last podcast that we did. We've also talked about this a lot over the last couple of months, years. I don't know how many videos we've done. We should probably quantify that.
A lot. But also we got a letter from the California Air Resources Board, and we want to talk to you about that.
Okay, so let's start with everybody's favorite topic: California's screwing over the automotive industry,
which makes no sense.
And let's hit. So we've made a lot of videos. Let's start with what you said first.
All right. The first thing is California wants the rules. They want to control what gets sold in their state. That's fine. That's allowed. But there are 17 other states that are saying, oh, we're going to comply too, which means every car manufacturer is going to say, well, hold on, I'm not going to make a car for one state. I'm going to make a car for all states because that makes sense. And then they also encompasses Canada and, Europe and their ridiculous rules. But that's a whole nother conversation. But the problem is it's fine if we make it for emissions or something minor, but now it's gotten out of control where they want to control the sale of vintage cars. They want to start removing cars off the roadways. They want to make sure that you can't drive an electric car. Or let me qualify that. They want to make sure that you don't drive anything but an electric car. They want to start just making rules for everything you do and getting you on mass transit, which they don't have and most states don't have. And the rules have gotten to the point it's just a power grab. It's a manipulation for control.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that they made these rules, and it was originally for smog.
Right. It was smoggy.
It was very smoggy. There's a great South Park episode all about it.
Yeah. Why does South Park always know what's going to happen before it happens?
It was when the Prius first came out.
Right.
They were kind of saying people were kind of smug about getting rid of the smog, and anyway, so. They make these rules to try to protect their environment, and it does help. And at some point, somebody took it too far.
Well, that's under
and
the Obama
17 other
administration.
states, 17 other states signed on.
Yeah, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Mexico, Colorado. I'm missing a whole bunch of them, but all the usual suspects, shall we say. But it's interesting. At the time when there was a lot of smog in LA, it made sense. It made sense to say, okay, we don't want people breathing that. But since then, a lot of things have changed. Cars have gotten cleaner. The environment has gotten better. But there's a point of too far in anything, no matter what it is. And pick a subject, literally any subject. Well, I think they've gone way too far.
It's not just emissions, because they've also added on a whole bunch of extra like qualifiers to how they calculate emissions, and MPG, which is the big one.
Right, which is not accurate, as we all know.
Right, because electric cars have also apparently, we talked about this before,
the
multiplier.
Yes.
It's like 400 times multiplier,
right.
Something like that for the end.
So whatever it really does, they multiply it times like 400, so consumers are confused.
Right, MPGE is unfortunately not really good. It's easy for us to look at and say, oh, I understand that, but it actually is not an accurate calculation of what's happening.
And people that own electric cars know that. I work with a bunch of different auto journalists, and one of them, a friend of ours, Carl, got a Volkswagen ID Buzz, which just won SUV of the year for North American Car and Truck, and it's a cool little car.
Also interesting because an electric vehicle won
only the SUV.
Well, yeah, but a hybrid won Car of the Year,
hybrid with Civic.
But
Right.
I'm actually kind of glad that not an EV and not a hybrid won truck of the year. It was an ICE.
Right. It was the Ford Ranger.
Right. And then I think that does speak to what the market wants versus what's being mandated, which is kind of the whole point here.
Right. But the trucks were all gas. Let's get that.
Okay.
It was Ram, it was Tacoma, and it was Ranger, of which all three are excellent. So we just didn't know which one would win because there's 50 jurors and they're from Canada and the US and they all have different opinions. But back to the ID Buzz, this is what happened. He got the ID Buzz and it said it had 300 miles of range. And then he got in the vehicle, said, I'm going to go run an errand. And he was down to 123. And he's like, well, how'd that happen? I'm in California. It's not too cold. It's not too warm. So then he realized that if he's not tethered to a cord, essentially, how far he can go, you're out of juice. And he says in certain areas of California, there's still no charging. So it kind of left him in a catch-22. So he said he basically drove it until it got down to like 75 miles and he parked it and then he drove something else because he drove one of his own vehicles, which is what I do when I get electric cars. I just had the ACCII ZDX, which is posted on our Car Smart.
Driving around, we give it a fair review, and then we park it because we don't want to kill the battery.
Right, and I want whoever's picking it up from the media fleet to not be stuck.
We don't have charging ports here. We got like, what, one? That's
We
like
have
a couple
Tesla.
miles away.
Tesla.
I think it's only Tesla, yeah.
Right, you can have one in your house. But I just reviewed the ACCII ZDX. But you know, it was okay. It's a Blazer EV underneath. You can check out, if you're interested in one, I'm very fair about how I evaluate vehicles, and that's on the Car Smarts channel. So we've removed all car reviews, moved them over to Car Smarts. And if you want to check out our reviews, they're all living over there.
Yeah. So CARB is cracking down. It's tied in with CAFE standards from the federal government, and they are restricting what's being able to be produced, and they're actually making cars that consumers don't even want because they're sitting on the lots
Oh, yeah.
for
Hundreds of days.
incredibly long periods. We just did, I think, 2 different videos on that, where talking about how long vehicles are sitting on the lots, and they're just nobody wants them.
Nobody wants them.
So they're just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. The batteries are actively decaying, sitting on the lot.
Because they're not getting
So when
cycled.
someone does buy them, they're going to be, it's like buying a phone. Like if you're unlucky enough to buy the phone that's been sitting there for a long time, your battery's not going to have full
It
capacity.
degrades, yes. So it's important to say one thing. CAFE is corporate average fuel economy.
Yeah.
Before Trump was in office, before Obama was in office, the corporate average fuel economy was 34.5 miles to the gallon. So all the fleets, no matter what your brand was, Honda, they'd take all of the vehicles you sold, they'd total them up, and they'd divide them out. The only exceptions were heavy-duty trucks. So it'd be like an F-250, 350. That wasn't included, but the light-duty trucks were. And they took all those numbers, and they divided them out. And each manufacturer had to reach 34.5 miles to the gallon on average. So that's pretty easy to figure out. Someone in corporate says, listen, we're going to sell less trucks. We're going to sell more fuel-efficient cars. We'll do a lot of entry-level priced cars, and we'll balance that out. But when Obama got in office, he jacked it up. He wanted it 54.5 miles to the gallon. The problem is at 34.5, there's only one company that made that number, and that was Honda, because they don't sell pickup trucks. They sell a Ridgeline, but it's not a truck.
The Leaf helped as well because that technically
It was
counts.
Nissan, though.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But still, Nissan sells trucks. They sold.
But you're right.
Titan truck.
Honda did have very fuel efficient vehicles,
Right.
and they were able to kind of get there. But at 50,
34.5, they were the only one.
now at 50,
54.5,
it's not
nobody
possible.
makes it. Nobody.
Well, with the false multiplier on EVs, that was possible, but in
But it's
reality,
fake.
in reality, or even if you calculate the EVs correctly, it's still just not possible. I think the best MPG vehicle that we've ever driven was an A3 TDI that got 53 miles to the gallon.
I think it was 55, but
But
it
it was over 50,
right.
which was really hard to get, and that was in a diesel vehicle 10 years ago.
Well,
A little over 10 years
Volkswagen
ago.
screwed themselves on that.
True.
Let's be honest. And my prediction, here's a prediction for you. In the next couple of years, you're going to go, I got this great idea. We're going to sell clean diesel, and it's going to come back. And if you go, oh, no. Well, you know what? They're still selling diesel in Europe. And they sell diesel hybrid that gets 70 miles to the gallon.
So there's a new
Bring that here to the U.S. They don't sell it everywhere in certain countries. But if you brought a 70 mile to the gallon SUV car that's diesel hybrid, I'd buy one.
there's a new diesel
amazing.
hybrid that's being built by Ram. We don't know
Right.
what the final product's going to look like,
Well,
but
that's under
it's a
Tim
diesel
Kanakius.
energy. It's a diesel engine powering a battery. and the battery's powering the car. So it is a hybrid.
I don't really
Well,
like.
that's how the big rigs work.
Right. But I'm thinking hybrid, like when you're talking regular hybrid,
Like a regular hybrid,
electric
yeah.
for the low speed, you get over 30 miles an hour, it transitions, and then that switches over on the highway, let's say at higher speeds, to whatever propulsion that is. But we're also seeing hydrogen too. But we got off the path.
It's easy to.
There's a lot going on. And this is probably I've been doing this a long time, like 40 years, 30 some years. I've been in the auto industry doing this. Everything from dealer training that you name the aspect of the auto industry. And I have never seen so much automotive news, stirring, creativity, changes, some good, some horrible, in my life.
Mm.
I mean, I've been doing these news reports for what, like 10 years, maybe longer, 20 years,
Pretty much since YouTube came out.
right? And initially, you and I would be calling each other going, well, I got to scratch together a story on something. But now there's so much content. Like, I'll say, hey, I got 6 new stories in the hopper because he edits my stories before they go live. And I'm like, there's so many. I think there's more than 6 sitting there now.
Mm.
And I can't record them fast enough.
Well, we can't release them fast enough either.
Right.
So
It's too much.
And I think the big story right now is while California is overreaching and
Way
they
overreaching.
are restricting the ability of the manufacturers to be profitable and make good cars.
Mhm.
And
Make
there's
what
been
people want.
so many changes in the legislation from the federal government side as well, where Trump took away the ability of CARB to push as hard as it did, and then Biden put it back in place, and now Trump's promising to take it away again.
I think we just
and
need to defund the damn thing.
and every time that these manufacturers are talking about, well, we're going to go all electric, and it's very unpopular within the company.
You know,
Or we're going to go autonomous, and it's unpopular within the company. And you'd think
well,
that,
consumers who are actually doing the buying.
right? And it seems to me that they're just doing whatever the whims are of the current administration, so that they don't get in trouble. Because if something happens to them, they want to get bailed out like they did last time.
Right. Well, I think we're done with the bailouts. And what's
Hopefully.
Yeah. But here, let me just define the California Air Resources Board. They originally were put in place in the 70s, like we said.
Mm.
It was about air and people breathing cleanly. Great. That's awesome. State of California had a ton of problems around LA because of the smog. And now we're going forward, and now they're controlling cars and what's being sold. But when Obama gave them that power, Trump tried to take it away in court, but he waited too long. He waited to the end of his 4-year term and said, you know what? We need to get rid of this. And they took it to court. And while it was still in the court cases, like get on the docket waiting to go live, Biden got elected. And he went in, and the first thing he did is, we're taking that off the table. We're giving them more power. And then here we are, full circle, back to Trump being in charge. And I know what he's going to do. He's going to take away that $7,500 tax credit, which is going to kill the electric vehicle market here in the U.S.
Yep.
Take away the mandate. California may say otherwise, but he's also going to go after CARB. And I know this because a new senator who replaced J.D. Vance, who was elected, his name is Bernie Moreno, is a car dealer. And he owns a lot of car dealers. And first thing he said is, this is absolutely catastrophic for these electric vehicle mandates. We have a segment on that coming up in the near future. You can check that out on Car Coach Reports. But he's right, because you are killing an industry. Now, you may go, whatever, these dealers make too much money. All right. They were extremely greedy during COVID. However, they now have hundreds of days of inventory sitting on their lot. And that's a problem because they can't sell them. And so car manufacturers say, well, then we're going to make less of the fill in the blank, electric cars, a gas-powered car, or whatever. So they start telling people, we're not making this much production. We're going to cut down production. We're going to let people go, which impacts not just the manufacturer, but the suppliers, which could impact your job, depending on what you do. I mean, and you think, oh, I don't work in that industry. It doesn't make a difference. Maybe you're the accounting firm. Maybe you're the marketing company. Maybe you're the advertising firm. Maybe you're the local TV or radio station that relies on the local advertiser, which happens to be local car dealers. Well, all that's going to be impacted. It could even be the grocery store across the street where everyone goes to get lunch. When local dealers are impacted, it's going to impact the economy as a whole. The impact is about 60% on the Dow. That's huge. That impacts the stock market. So literally, wherever you are, whatever you do, You may go, I'm not buying a new car. Like, personally, I'm not buying a new car. I've got a 2016 Porsche Cayenne diesel, and I'm not getting rid of it. You have a Cayenne diesel also. We love
2013. I'm
yeah,
not getting rid of it.
love it. But when you start thinking about people that do buy cars every 3 years, the impact is dramatic. And they're not buying electric cars. They do want hybrids. They want the best of both worlds, which is why I keep coming full circle back to that. Hybrid diesel might be something in the future. Hydrogen is also something that Hyundai's working on. I know BMW's working on. I've driven it, but they're using hydrogen to power battery-powered cars so you can fill up quicker.
Mhm.
If you want a battery-powered car, I don't want to be limited, and we already know the infrastructure for hydrogen is extremely minimal unless you live in Southern California
Or Connecticut.
or Connecticut. So these are big issues. But the big part of what we're talking about today is, why is one state making the rules for all the others, the impact to you, and what's Trump going to do about it?
Right. So let's start with my favorite piece of this story.
Yeah.
So we did a story on vintage cars. There was a survey that went out to vintage car owners in California, asking them how often they drive their cars. They were trying to do an analysis of leisure activities on the road and the amount of pollution, and they were trying to gather some information about that.
Sounds to me, when California asks questions, they got something in money.
Well, they have a very stark history of saying, "Oh, what are you doing over there? Okay, we're gonna legislate you." Okay, so they they put out this survey, they gather some information, and we decided to do some journalistic investigation and put together some dots. And what we find is that all signs are pointing to regulations coming through multiple different legislations that will amount to you can't drive your vintage car on the road anymore. And it's not like, and this is the same thing goes for the electric vehicle mandate. There is no rule that says you can't drive a combustion vehicle. You can't drive your classic car. It's just that there's a bunch of rules
That
that
make it
will
impossible.
that make it impossible for you to drive anything but an electric car on the road, or at least a hybrid for now until they, make it more strict later. So
They're going to make it really difficult to buy gas. The
Mhm.
taxes they're going to put on it, road use tax, not
Mhm.
just for gasoline-powered cars, but for electric cars too.
Yeah. So, and of course, vintage cars, classic cars, antique cars, they're kind of notorious for not having very efficient engines, and aren't, quote unquote, good for the environment. They have high CO2 emittance from
How often
their
are you
exhaust,
driving it?
and that's kind of the big point here. And so we did a whole video talking about how California is starting to put rules in place, or at least hinting towards doing that. And there is, I think, a bill sitting in California Senate that they are working on right now,
It's been sitting since the 80s, and they've keep bringing it up, and it keeps getting squashed. But it's
which is
back
good.
again.
Yeah. Well, and anytime it's back again, there's always a possibility that it could get passed, because California seems to be hell bent on removing our ability to drive what we want to drive.
That is true.
So we put out the video. It does pretty well for us. We think
Actually,
it does pretty well.
I thought it did pretty good. It wasn't viral crazy, but it did. But we've done a couple of them. They've put together. They are viral.
Right, and who does it catch the attention of but the California Air Resource Board themselves, and we get a letter.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, am I reading this letter? I got an email.
I thought it was fake.
I thought it was too. And then I went and looked, and I'm like, oh, it's from a legit address.
Mhm.
So I had to send it to Paul. I'm like, you're not going to believe this.
It was actually really funny.
They also sent one to the Blaze, because I supply content to the Blaze and to Newsmax. They sent it to them. Newsmax just ignored it, which I don't blame them. The Blaze put a little caveat in the bottom of the California Air Resources Board contacted them. But the letter was vaguely written, and it was from someone in their communications department.
Well, they have like a team of people.
It wasn't the legal department.
No.
So I ignored it.
No, but they put the whole letter together, and it was, hey, here is the points that you covered in your video. This is our stance on what you said, and here's official links and documents that support what we're doing.
Which
And-
is the same thing you've been talking
But
about.
what's really funny is that they say, well, you said that there's a vintage car ban coming, and that the census had like some nefarious purpose behind it, but we say it's not, and here's all of our evidence. And our first thought is, well, you just kind of proved that we did some good journalistic work. Like,
And
thanks.
we're telling the truth.
Like you can put all these dots together and say, well, that doesn't mean that they're going to ban classic cars. But in our estimation, and based on history, it means that they are going to ban classic cars. So it's kind of it's a balance of matter of opinion and a matter of looking back at history.
Well, we already know how they operate, and I have a lot of friends that live in Southern California, and they say every few years these type of things pop up. Sometimes a variant of that gets passed, but you know their goal, which doesn't make sense because the number one state in the entire country where all these cool hot rods came from, live, as well as suppliers, manufacturers for the aftermarket, which is SEMA, which is if you're a car person, you know what SEMA is, the Special Equipment Manufacturers Association. It's based in Diamond Bar, California. I mean, California is hot rod country.
Yep.
The magazine Hot Rod came from there. Though Edelbrock.
They have more events out there than pretty much anywhere else in the country. Maybe not the
How about
world, but
Peterson
the
Museum?
country. Yeah.
If you haven't been to it, it's worth going to. But there's museums all over the place that are car museums. It is a car culture in California. It's part of who they are.
Oh my God, Monterey Car Week,
Oh, yeah.
Rensport Reunion, which has been in California the last 3 times.
Yep.
I mean, there's countless events every weekend going on in California car culture. Like
Plus racetracks.
this is where
Phenomenal
where it
racetracks.
started.
Yeah.
This is where it was cultivated. This is where it's expanded. This is where it lives. It is in California.
I know people that moved to California just because of the culture.
I mean, I understand that because when I moved to Seattle, there was huge car culture out there because there's so many great cars that are not being destroyed by the salty air because they're out in the desert
Right.
or, at kind of a, middling climate out in the Seattle area and whatnot. But also, large number of people. So why are they trying to kill the car culture? It was because they don't care about the car culture.
They don't.
This is the last thing on their mind. They do not care about
It's
the
about
history.
control.
It's entirely about them trying to get their agenda across because they believe that these movements will help improve the environment. And not to go too deep on the environment, but there has been little to no proof that there's been actual noticeable changes based on the rules that they put in place, except for the fact that there's less smog in the air in
Well,
California.
that's a good thing. I mean, no one wants to breathe.
No, and that is good.
Yeah.
But there's a certain point of going too far
In anything.
where if there's no options left but to drive vehicles that you don't want, that aren't efficient for your lifestyle, that are horrible for the environment and make economic bad sense for the government and for the economy as a whole. I mean, there's a lot of negatives that are stacking up here that California seems to not care at all about.
Right. Well, here's interesting. So I did some more research.
Okay.
All right. They said they want to ban classic cars. We know that's true. They can say whatever they want in whatever email they want to send me. And because we're journalists, we're allowed to say whatever we want to say. It's called the First Amendment. And
True.
if they don't like it, I'm sorry. And that's a whole other conversation. However, doing some research. Do you remember Cash for Clunkers?
Oh my gosh.
I was the first one to call it on national news, on Fox News, CNN, all of them, that this is disaster waiting to happen.
I will never forget Neil Cavuto having you back on and saying, you called this years ago. You knew it was going to happen. I thought it was so funny.
I read my crystal ball clearly. So Cash for Clunkers is a disaster. People that had money were trading in trash cars they either bought from friends or pulled out of a salvage yard and turned around and got their $2,500. And then they would go to salvage yards. They were supposed to be destroyed. And many were. So nice cars. Also, I have a friend who made a lot of money by taking those cars and going to the salvage yards and go, hey, they're going to give you $2,500. I'll give you $5,000. So the salvage yard didn't care. They just I'll take the money. They're in business to make money.
There's a lot of great cars.
And then they took those cars and put them on a ship, filled the ship up and sent them overseas, which was not the goal. Even though they were supposed to all be destroyed, some sadly were, but some of them probably deserved to be. Others didn't. But who took advantage of that program? People that made a lot of money because you had to have enough money to buy the next car, even if there was $7,500 coming to you. So it was a disaster in the end. This is under the Obama administration. I called it right out of the box. I go, this is just a dumb idea because people that don't have $7,500, you could buy a used car for $70,000. You could buy a Camry or an F-150 or something older. And lots of people did. They were going to keep their cars. So now it's back. They have a new program. We'll be reporting on this soon. I'm doing a deeper dive. It's called Clean Cars for All.
Sounds like the same thing.
It's just another name of the same stupid program.
Did they print out a new decal and just slap it on the back there? Or?
Well, the cash for clunkers history, as we know, but the eligibility, again, is interesting. It's very focused, which, again, poorly laid out.
I haven't read this one yet.
So
for it.
I haven't sent it to you because I'm still investigating. So California says you can get up to $12,000 on your trade-in. That's great if you've got money to buy the next car and you can afford the bigger insurance policy. And if you buy an electric car, you need a charging station, you need infrastructure, all these things. Or if you don't, you want an older, you're going to trade it in toward a Nissan Versa that costs, $22,000, you still have to pay the higher insurance and a car payment, most likely. So the new applicant to the Vehicle Replacement Grant Program, they're calling it a grant program to bypass the news, essentially. You have to live in the Bay Area. You must be registered in that area with the vehicle. It has to be 2007 or older. And you have to have lived there for the last 2 years. You have to have an annual gross adjusted income that is at least $77,000. Again, not everybody makes sense.
This is very specific.
Oh, it's very specific. And it has to be below 300% of the federal poverty line. That's the other choice. I love these things. You have to be single, making at least $45,000, and a family of 2 making under $61,000, or a family of 3 making under $77,000, or a family of 4 or larger making under $93,000 a year. But the bottom line is they're using this as the guise to get rid of older cars off the road. If you've got a family of 4 or larger and you do make $93,000, it's good money to make, but you also are feeding 4, 5, 6 mouths, plus the cost of everything getting more expensive, which makes it unobtainable. Otherwise, you would have bought something else. You're most likely driving a used minivan. You're doing your best to keep it alive. That's not your average person.
So they're offering how much money?
They're offering up to $12,000, and you can
That'll get you half a car.
Right, to trade in your old vehicle and purchase or lease an electric vehicle only.
Okay, that'll get you a quarter of a car.
Right, and you get or you can get a prepaid car for public transit or an e-bike. Those are your options.
No, because if you have a car, why would you switch to a bike?
If you're a family of 4, you all going to get on an e-bike? What is this, India?
No, but even if you're only a family of, does it say family of 4?
It says, based on the amount. Single person, $45,000. A family of 2 making $61,000. A family of 3 making $77,000. Or a family of 4 or larger making under $93,000.
Okay, well,
how do you
regardless,
ride on an e-bike?
I feel like if you're in California, in the Bay Area,
it's expensive.
As the pretenders, nobody walks in LA.
Yeah, right.
Nobody walks in LA.
And
so
nobody walks in San Francisco either.
San Francisco, no, nobody. Well, it's a little walkable, but it's hard.
It's steep.
There is some public transport there, but I would never want an e-bike trying to get around San Francisco. Last time it's been a long time since you and I were in San Francisco.
He was just there for Volkswagen ID Buzz.
Yeah, and
in November.
And I was there a couple of years ago, and I totally forgot how steep it is to drive around there. It's a little scary. I would never want to drive an e-bike around unless you live specifically in an area that does not connect with the really steep hill parts.
And there's highways and stuff and everything. And
well, I guess the trolley's not too bad, but it doesn't go everywhere. And you're not going to be able to use that. You're not going to be able to use that card for the taxis or anything.
Oh no, only public transport.
Right. So
if you want to use a Waymo, which is a whole other conversation, or a Uber or a Lyft, that's out of your pocket.
Yeah, I don't want to be in a Waymo with a chance of it running someone over.
I actually have had a friend in a Waymo who works for the Detroit News.
Oh yeah, I like this one.
And he says, I got to test this out. It's a great story. I can write an article about it. So he went and ordered the Waymo. He got in the vehicle. And as he's driving just a short distance, he was going from like some event that we were at to the hotel. It started raining. Okay, it's San Francisco. There's mist in the air. Well, the rain was enough that the vehicle pulled over. 4 ways went on. And on the screen, it said, a manned vehicle is coming to receive you. And so he had to wait in the vehicle till the manned vehicle pulled up next to him. Then he got out, went into it, and then took him to his destination. And again, he was so disenchanted with the thought of, he thought this is a great story.
I would be too. Yeah.
Ride in a vehicle. Well, the new ones are supposed to have no pedals, no steering wheel, no people on
Stage 5.
I'm out. That's an amusement ride.
I will never forget the Will Smith movie I, Robot.
Right.
Where I referenced this a lot, where he's trying to run away or chase after it's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but he's trying to run away from all these robots trying to chase him. And he gets in the car with the girl and he says, "Okay, I'm gonna drive." She goes, "What are you, crazy? You're gonna drive the car?" He hits the button and the steering wheel and pedals come out, and then he actually drives. And she is like totally mind blown that he would even like think
know how to
about
do it?
grabbing a steering wheel in the first place.
Right.
But I always think it's kind of funny. I don't ever want to be in a world where you're on an amusement ride, as you like to say.
It is.
Um,
You
I-
get an amusement ride, you go for the ride,
yeah.
and you get out.
Well,
And that's fine if you're on a track.
it's
But-
actually great if you're on a track, because there's an AI race car that had
not
raced a
doing that
track,
silliness.
and it was faster than a real driver. But you can't do that on a road. There's too many variables.
Right. You got people, you've got animals, you've got objects, you've got construction.
Yeah.
And then my favorite is people that don't like the autonomous cars who put pylons on the hood of them
Oh, that's
or put
funny.
them in front, and it freaks it out.
People do that in New York City. There's some like the Teslas, and they'll just like put something in front of them
freaks
and
it
they'll
out.
stop. It's really funny.
Also, they've had a couple Waymos and a couple autonomous cars go through wet concrete roads, fresh asphalted roads. Are like, whoa, whoa, trying to flag it down, but there's no one behind the steering wheel where you and I would go, oh, there's construction. I will slow down and use a different route. No, they go right to the middle of it because you can't be
doesn't know.
monitored 24/7, 365, although they'd like to do that. But so this cash for clunkers thing is
Yeah,
fine.
sorry.
Yeah, don't give them any more ideas. But here's something interesting. Now, I don't know if you saw when Elon Musk was showing, the Cybertruck and the robo-taxi, and he had his big event.
Yeah.
So we know that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are working on Doge, which is going to start reducing costs for the government. And part of that is the $7,500 tax credit, the mandates, and all the restrictions on automotive. And Bernie Moreno says he wants to be the car czar, although I'm trying to somehow get my foot in the door there. So if anyone knows anyone, please help me get in and help them with the reality of things for what you deal with, what we deal with every day.
And we really just want to help you as the consumer, because we care so much about this industry. We've both grown up in it, and we have a lot of friends that care so much. We don't want the car, not just the car culture, but the industry as a whole is turning into this lifeless husk.
Yeah.
And
no personality.
and it is hugely important to the world economy that it continues to exist.
Right. And
And we want to do what we can to try to help that continue on. There's millions and millions of jobs at stake. Look at what happened with Volkswagen and the strikes with the unions in Germany.
Right.
I mean,
They shut down 3 plants in the end, and they let about 100,000 people
and
go
the
without
UAW
jobs. And they're never going to get those jobs back.
And the UAW, the multiple UAW strikes. I mean, there are millions of jobs and billions of dollars at stake. And if they collapse,
Maybe trillions.
It's like you were saying earlier, it's not just affecting the OEMs, it's also affecting the aftermarket, all the service industries, the gas industry, and anybody even slightly connected to it in marketing and accounting and
even event planning,
transport, whatever, everything you can think of. There's technology companies that are hinged
like
in
NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, AMD, Bosch. There's a whole
the
tire companies. There's a lot that hinges on the industry continuing to be as strong as it is right now.
Well, it was.
And as it was, you're right. And with CARB cracking down as hard as it is, we are looking at some serious damage being done.
And what's happening is there's shrinkage in every single brand. And every single brand is in trouble. My prediction is we're going to see some consolidation. We already know about the Honda-Nissan merger. We don't know what it's going to look like. I'll be monitoring that.
I'm starting to get a little nervous about that.
I think that Nissan's going to end up with the body on frames like the Frontier, maybe using the Titan, again, pulling that out of the woodwork and using that because their cars are, they're okay.
I think they're going to end up...
Honda cars are better.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're going to end up in a strategic partnership. I don't think that they're going to merge. And the reason why I say that is because...
And Mitsubishi will be included.
And this is only a partial quote. There is a full quote, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the head of the head of Honda was asked about, what does Nissan bring to the table? And he goes, oh, I don't really know.
We'll just sell you some interfaces.
Obviously, it's a little clickbaity. It's kind of the idea is Nissan doesn't have a lot to bring to the table anymore.
Well, you know what happened.
They've discontinued their sports cars, and their Z actually outsold the Supra this year in 2024.
Interesting.
Which I was shocked to hear. Many other people were shocked to hear, but I just don't know how they're going to find some way to keep Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi
right now-
alive.
right now-
Actually, Mitsubishi's going to be fine. They're the biggest bank in the world.
Right.
They're fine.
Yeah, and no, people don't know that. They, as a car company, that's a very small segment of what they do. Interestingly, the Japanese government is about saving face. It's part of their culture. They went to Toyota years ago and said, you need to work with Mazda, you need to work with Subaru. And so there is a partnership with those three brands. Toyota, obviously the leader, the number one car manufacturer in the world is Toyota. And so Toyota is very strong. And so they were asked by the Chinese or the Japanese government, hey, can you help Mazda? Can you help Subaru? Mazda puts out some pretty cool product. And an Miata, by the way, is going to have more power. So I'm excited. And I like the MX-5. I still call it a Miata.
I'm still waiting for the new rotary engine to come out. They've been talking about it for years.
Yeah, but that's where they came from. I had an RX-7 way back when they first came out, and it was an awesome little piece. It has its issues, but it helped save Subaru also, and they've got better technology because their interfaces were super dated. But
Toyota was pretty bad too,
Yeah.
but I assume that the technical partnership helped them actually step up the
Right.
game.
And so Honda, which is the 5th largest car manufacturer in the world and builds mostly cars and no trucks, at least here in the U.S.
Oh, just the Ridgeline, but it's kind of a
The Ridgeline's cool.
it's a baby truck.
It's a baby truck. It's an entry-level truck. It's like, I don't really want a truck, but I want.
It's a Maverick. It's the same thing.
Right. So I like the Maverick, but that's a different story.
Yeah, it was a good car, yeah.
So I believe, and I bet you anything I'm right, that the Japanese government went to Honda and said, hey, listen, you cannot let Nissan and Mitsubishi die because Renault pulled their investment out of it because of the Carlos Ghosn story, which we have covered in depth. I've covered it with Michael Palka on the radio. I've done this a lot. The CEO was accused of something. We'll never know what the real story is, but what we do know,
That was wild.
that was wild. We never have stories like that.
I'm waiting like 20 years from now, someone's going to make a movie. And it's
There
going to
already
be
was a movie. They showed the escape. He escaped in a music case and
Yeah, yeah.
living in Lebanon, and Japan's trying to bring him back. But the bottom line is,
spy thriller.
I've met Carlos Ghosn many times.
Yeah.
I had lunch with him at CES. Oh my God, more than a decade ago, I bet. Very smart guy. And when I used to be a trainer for Nissan. When I heard that he was going to be the president at the time, I bought stock in the company,
Yeah.
and it tripled. Thank God I sold out. But I knew that just meeting the guy and talking to him, it wasn't that he, much like Jose Munez, not car people, smart marketers. Much like Mullally did for Ford. When you see someone who gets the bigger picture, and whether you like Elon Musk or not, he's a great marketer. And you see what they can do, that tells me the potential. But when you get rid of your lead guy and then you lose Jose Munez at the same time, who's now at Hyundai, and they're just killing it. Their product they're pumping out amazing product. And they covered a lot of that at CES and so forth. But just to refocus, I believe that Honda was told by the Japanese government, you need to partner with your little sister Nissan and your little sister Mitsubishi and work a relationship like Toyota did, or we're going to lose them and we're going to lose face on the world stage. And that is a huge embarrassment to the Japanese culture.
And also, like I said, there's billions of dollars at stake and millions of
Jobs.
jobs in everything connected. If Nissan goes out of business, every Nissan dealership closes.
Well, they already shut the Infinity dealerships down and told them to fold it into Nissan. That's a huge embarrassment. And it, like right after we reported on that, literally within less than a week, boom, there it is. Honda's suddenly talking to them. So we know that something happened at a much higher level than just a bunch of car companies. So I think in the end, all companies will survive it. And you're probably right based on what happened with Toyota, that we'll see 3 separate car companies that survive. But there is a consolidation. And that consolidation is partly what we're also getting at with what happens when governments control things. In the UK, there's no cars being made there anymore. They all got sold up to other car companies like Jaguar, which we covered on the first podcast, that joke of whatever they're doing. And I've talked to internal people who have told me, wait, do you see the new one? It's beautiful. Okay, change my mind. Change my mind.
You know,
right now,
I've
it's a
thought about it
no-go.
a little bit, and it kind of looks like
A
you
crisis
remember
across-
remember the a little bit. It also looks very much like they copied Rolls Royce's homework on the Spectre.
which is not selling well.
But you know what? I just remembered the other day. It looks like the Batmobile a little bit from the Batman the Animated Series.
Maybe.
Just a little bit. Just because it's just a big
It's a
square.
box.
It looks like a cartoonist drew it. It's not like
Don't tell the designer that.
I don't know. Maybe they like it. I don't know.
I don't know. But what we're talking about is we go back to, so what happens with the California Air Resources Board.
Mm.
And there's a lot of offshoots off this. We can talk about Chinese cars and coming in, and maybe we'll talk about that in the next podcast. Talk about
China and the
China and the
impact
car.
on
There's a lot to
industry.
unpack there.
It's heavy. Their
There's
their
so
thumb
much.
is.
Yeah, but I sent you an article, and it was actually so deep dive
Mm.
that after I did the research, he's like, "This is so deep dive, I have to read it 4 or 5 times." So that tells me it's probably too deep to do for a Friday segment. But
It's hard to consolidate into 5 to 10 minutes when it's a conversation. The Chinese market's very complicated, and they have their own rules about how things work. They also have their own culture about how they interact with each other.
and how they interact.
So we'll have to talk about that next time.
We'll do that on the next podcast. So I want to get back to California and robo-taxis.
Yeah.
So when Elon Musk showed us the robo-taxi, everyone's like, "Oh, that's great. That's fine. Is it an amusement ride?" Sure, because he did it on like Universal Studios lot. So
For safety reasons, obviously.
right, and that makes sense because that means, well, I know it's possible. In 2007, I rode in an Audi from Palo Alto, California, to the Consumer Electronics Show. We stopped at the border at Nevada and California, and they changed license plates. At the time, each state was controlling the rules and regulations of autonomous cars.
Yeah, it's still kind of like that, though. They've lessened up some of the rules.
Right. So, but there are no rules, but that's what we'll talk about. And we got to Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, and you could only take your hands off the steering wheel while on the highways. And this is in 07. This is a long time ago. And in the passenger seat was an engineer. And they just made sure that you...
It's like Cadillac with Super Cruise.
Right. Well, Cadillac started that way, but Super Cruise is pretty... Actually, we'll get off ramps. If you hit the turn signal, it'll get off. If you put it into the navigation, it'll put on the turn signal. It'll get off the lane.
It's pretty good.
I mean, if it's a mapped road, someone told me over 750 million miles of roadway.
Highway.
Of roadway. They're now doing secondary roads.
Oh, they are now. Okay.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of roadways. So we got to test it on a couple of General Motors products. It works, probably one of the best on the market. Mercedes-Benz also has a phenomenal system, and they're working on level 3 of 5. Level 5 is nothing. But the robo-taxi would be a level 5, which means no steering wheel, no pedals. You get into the vehicle, it takes you where you want to go. That's fine, except for just this past week, and I don't think I told you about this.
Go on.
I was on a radio station, and they asked me to research this. And somebody got in a Waymo to go to the airport that got to LAX, and it just kept going around in circles. This is before the fires.
Oh, it never stopped?
It never stopped. The guy missed his flight for 20 minutes. It drove around the airport.
And there's nothing you can do.
He was trying to figure out how to get out of the car. He's on the app, let me out. It wouldn't, because the car couldn't get to the curb. It just kept going around the circle at LAX.
Instead of what we would do is just double park for 5 seconds.
Move further down, and you can walk. Now, it knew to get you to that location, only knew that location, where a human would have said, well, just pull further up and you can walk backwards. And the guy missed his flight. And it made a huge news story. So that creates distrust by consumers, but and the end user. But I will tell you, with Doge, we're talking about Vivek and Elon Musk. We were talking about that just full. I do talk in full circles. I feel like Trump sometimes. I talk in circles, but I do get back to it. President Trump said that they're going to start working on autonomous cars. And here's what people don't know and realize. There is no federal law as of this time from the Department of Transportation or National Highway Traffic Safety Administration on autonomous cars. So they're all kind of dancing around with calling it driver assistance systems so they can utilize it.
Trump has previously said that he does support the autonomous car technology. He wants that, but
it only works if every car on the road is autonomous, and that's not going to happen in 20 years even, because people keep their cars that are older. All it takes is one regular non-autonomous car that doesn't communicate, but that opens up a bag of worms. So no federal law. The insurance companies, and you have a friend who works for one, a reinsurance company, they don't like it.
Yep.
The reason they don't is it your fault? Is it my
Can't
fault?
tell.
Is it the car's fault? Is it the software's fault? There's an accident. And this opens up a bag of worms. Okay, those two things can be resolved. You could absolutely resolve those two problems. Okay, next problem, hackers.
And it's bad. Hackers are really bad.
Hacking is so bad.
It's worse than it's ever been.
Right, and there's no firewall. And the German car manufacturers work together on a consortium trying to get all the car manufacturers to work together so that there is some sort of firewall, some sort of protection, and they still don't have a permanent solution.
Well, the problem is, like, it's not like a phone where, Apple makes this,
right,
and within however long from when they finalize the product and they say, build them, put the tech on them and ship them. And they're constantly updating them, right?
Right.
A car doesn't work like that. You can't just like build in, physical things. That obviously helps because there's some physical technology chips and stuff in here that do certain things. There's also firmware updates and stuff
Well, they can
that
do
help
that.
against
They can do
hacking.
downloads, yeah.
But cars are much more limited. They have like 5-year-old technology. It
Well-
takes somewhere between 5 to 10 years to make a car.
True.
And like I got to see some cars when I worked at Nissan before they launched. And when they told me how long it took to design the Maxima, I think it was like 7 years or something like that.
Which they don't sell anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it took them so long to design it, and then when they finally got it, it was this really old piece of technology now. Nothing was new and up to date, and that's why you're always seeing the car companies try to add more and more and more to try to stay ahead. And the technology isn't always good. Sometimes
It's very
it's,
hackable.
sometimes it's, ooh, look at this new fancy technology, and it doesn't work the way that it needs to work in order for it to be an effective product.
Well, think about the
And
hackability.
because of that, it's hackable. So
Right.
that's exactly what I'm getting after, is that it's old tech, and by the time it comes out, hackers have already said, oh, well, this works on a Bosch whatever version. Well, I've already hacked this in some other car, and now the brand new Mercedes that just came out yesterday, I can hack it now.
Right. And we just did a story, and it'll be coming out soon, on the tire pressure monitoring system known as TPMS.
Mhm.
It's hackable. And it gives access to your ECU, which is the computer for your car.
Yeah, because it's a direct connection with short-range radio frequencies.
Right. And once they access it, also we did a story in the past about electric cars. When you plug into your public charging station, it makes it hackable.
Because the terminals are hackable.
Right.
And then because of the
But also-
connection, because
right.
it's a power connection, but it's also a data connection. And so they can just say, okay, well, the car that you're connected to.
Is a Tesla, is a Ford,
like-
is a Hyundai. Pick the
Did you
product.
see Fast and Furious where all the cars like start driving after the bad guy and they're like driving out of the building
Which
and
is
like crashing? And
Fast and Furious 95?
it was one of them, definitely one of them.
Not the year 95. I say it's done like 95 different variants.
Yeah, but even like I was watching this video like on Instagram. Some guy had hacked into a Jeep, a regular Jeep Wrangler.
Did that years ago.
Or maybe it was a Kia. It was a new Kia. But although the Jeep was years ago, that was kind of
Oh,
the
I
big
sent you
story
that
was the
story
Jeep.
on-
Yeah,
yeah.
So the Kia was, he couldn't drive it, but he could walk up, unlock it, get right in, mess with anything he wanted. He just couldn't start the engine without the key.
Or steal what he wants.
He could just steal whatever he wanted. But even that as a minimum baseline for someone could walk up and unlock your car and get into it. And that's why we talk about like don't leave your keys by the door, because the guys will walk up with the dishes and they'll like get the signal and unlock your car and
All my keys in one of those
Faraday bags.
Faraday bags. Yeah. So all the keys for all our cars.
Yeah,
live
but
in a
the
Faraday bag.
potential for hacking is huge,
Right.
and
Just
the
pull up to your garage
and the
door and take it.
technology is not there. And you say, well, this car is so amazing because we have all these fun features and stuff. It's like, okay, well, if you can't even get certain basic things, like some random guy that has some hacking experience can walk up and just get in my car.
Buy the items on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I've got a
And then how
broken
how do you
things
translate that
in
to all electric cars? How do you translate that to autonomous
easier.
cars?
easier in electric cars.
Bro, because you can start an electric car without
Remotely.
needing the key, because you
Right.
don't need to have some way to activate the ignition.
Right. And this is not the fault of the manufacturers. This is technology and consumer electronics and regulation. So again, we have a problem with hacking. So we have a bunch of autonomous cars on the road, coming back to autonomous cars, and it gets hacked into. Then what? We got a problem. It's like Leave the World Behind. I don't know if you've seen the movie. I've only seen highlights of it. But all these Teslas come crashing into each other, and
it's kind of the same thing.
and everyone thinks, oh, the car's coming to save me. Oh, no, the car's coming to hit me.
Yep.
So, I mean, will that happen? No, but it's weird how a lot of things happen in the movies or books, and then suddenly they happen in reality. Just throwing that out there. So, what else is a problem? Well, consumers have to want it. So, consumers that have disabilities or that, I can see consumers doing stupid things like, I don't want to see my ex, so I'm going to put the kid and the dog in the car and send it to him, and then therefore I don't have to see his face. All right,
you
it's
trust
fine,
that?
but you're putting your kid and an animal or your kid
In
in
an
a
amusement
car. Yeah, and you just hope that it gets to its destination. I don't know. I mean, that may be another thing. And the big one is the weather. Now we know the weather can be manipulated. That's a whole other conversation.
Weather manipulation company.
Yep, there
Look it up.
actually is a company called the Weather Manipulation Company.
Yep.
So and they do it a lot. They've been doing it, believe it or not, since like the 1800s. It's very interesting if you want to look into that.
Yeah, the basic level. Now it's quite advanced.
Well, sure, 'cause
So
the
Saudi
military-
Saudi Arabia uses it to make it rain there because they don't get enough rain.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
But I'm sure wealthy people use it so that their wedding for their child that would be is sunny and not rainy. I'm sure that it goes that crazy.
But anyway, so
Makes money.
what we're
But-
trying to get after is
but
the
the-
technology is so advanced now.
Right, but what the cars can't read is snow. You live in Buffalo, and there are
The
times
sensors can't
Right.
figure it out
it
because they got to count.
gets
they-
caked up with snow
No,
and
they
ice.
got the LiDAR and they've got infrared and they've got cameras and it still screws it up. I will never forget driving when Genesis had first come out with the G90
Mhm.
and
Beautiful car.
I took it up to ski country to do a review of the car. And I had cruise control on. It deactivated cruise control because a little bit too much snow had gotten on the front sensor, which is a big piece of plastic. Most
Right.
cars have those these days.
Or they're hidden behind the logos.
Oh yeah, well it's actually better when they're hidden because then they don't get caked up.
But
Because
then
the
you
ones
can't see if it gets on the logo, because when it snows here, and if you don't live in snow, you probably don't experience it. It literally, it keeps hitting the car. And there are times that even the weather reporters get it completely wrong.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful today. You go outside and go, it's snowing pretty heavily. And where we live in
Yeah, so what, your
Buffalo,
car's not going to be able to drive you?
splits.
Or even in the case of what I was saying, that the cruise control just shuts off
Right.
and you can't even use regular cruise control because automatic cruise control or adaptive cruise control or whatever
bad
the
weather.
500 different versions of that name technology is,
The
because
big
everyone's got
acronym?
their own acronym.
Yeah.
That's another argument. It gets all caked up and then it just shuts off. It just
Right.
shuts off because
You shouldn't use cruise control and rain.
well, it's
rain
a safety
and snow and-
feature. It's like, well, look, if the roads are generally clear and I can use cruise control,
Mhm.
and then the car tells me, "Oh no, sorry, you can't do that." It's like, okay, well, I feel like I know more than a piece of machinery.
You do.
I feel like I can drive better than a piece of machinery when I grew up racing cars. So I feel like I should know.
Well, it also blocks backup cameras, parking sensors. I mean, when snow and ice or sand, rain, heavy rain, anything that could potentially ice specifically, which is pretty much most of the country, even in Texas, they had ice this week. And when
Yeah,
the ice
they
is on
don't
the
really get snow. They
part that's outside, it rains and then it freezes, you got ice, it can't see through it because it's obviously going to cause,
Mm.
it's not going to be able to see, it's not going to be able to sense. And so these are factors that are
Fog-
huge
fog's
problems.
really bad,
Fog
though.
is really bad.
Really
Lately, I had some bad fog. Sandstorms, depending on where you live. I mean, so all these weather factors that are uncontrollable, I think, are a huge factor, which is deters people from autonomous cars. Great to say they're available in perfect climate like Arizona, New Mexico, the southern part of New Mexico, not the northern part because that's mountains. But I mean, for the most part, it doesn't work everywhere and it doesn't work on a regular basis. You want to use it in LA? Great. You want to use it in California? Fine. Have your own state regulations, not forcing other states to comply. So again, this is part of what I know that Elon Musk is going to push for this because it's about money. I know that he wants that regulation and he proved it intentionally. I think we'll see a lot of that, especially after Doge is done, but that's only for like a 1.5-year program where he starts saving money. So he's going to say, I save you money and I need.
Well, we'll also see what they're actually going to be able to push through. But I think
He's
that
saying $2 trillion is a lot. So we'll see.
I think the most important piece of that is he agrees with Trump and with us and other people that the $7,500 tax credit, which is obviously not $7,500 at the top end, it's a scaling thing, but the
Right.
tax
Depends
credit,
how much money you make. Again,
the electric vehicle tax credit and things related to that is coming out of your pocket. So imagine if your taxes were less and it would be easier for you to afford the car that you want and you weren't being forced into buying an electric car. And if you want one, that's fine. We
go
want
buy.
you-
There's
yeah.
some great electric cars out there.
We've seen a lot of really good ones, and a lot of other journalists have also praised a lot of new EVs for being really good vehicles. Not good electric cars, good vehicles.
Right.
And that's what we want at the end of the day.
I
So
think you're going to see I think you'll see very
if they cut that out,
being sold. It's definitely going to impact the electric vehicle market in the U.S., which means that it will impact other countries that typically follow. I think I sent you an article that was it the Netherlands that they have like 98% of the cars on the road are electric. But it's pretty high, whatever the percentage. It's like the size of Rhode Island. I mean,
And they've heavily subsidized the electric charging,
Right.
and but there's not
but
that
they're
many.
saying people still have gasoline-powered cars. They're just not driving them. They're waiting for this regulation to change. And the subsidy is so heavy that it makes no sense to purchase an electric car. So it's either you can get this car
Isn't
with
there
a
also an additional charge that, like a tax that they put on ICEs?
They do that in England.
Yeah.
But that may change because they don't have the infrastructure.
Plus
pay
they have the
electricity.
congestion charges, but it only applies to non-electric vehicles. So if you have a hybrid, or it might
I
maybe
think this absurdity is going to change.
California's, I think, has that in certain areas.
it's
And we know London's got it everywhere, and now we got
Yeah.
New York doing it for the congestion tax. It's not specific to
That's-
EVs. It's specific to all cars.
That infuriates me.
They're probably gonna. Well, she might not repeal it, but when she gets replaced,
She'll get replaced.
yeah, when Hochul gets replaced, then they'll probably take it down.
Here's what makes no sense. I used to live at 85th and Columbus in Manhattan, which is the Upper West Side. I had an apartment there till COVID. And there was always a parking issue because
Mhm.
they had replaced a lot of the parking spots with these rentals, which very, very rarely were there any of them used. But if they were there, one or two, they were never all gone, even on a weekend when it was a beautiful weather, because people either walked or, maybe they'd rent a bike or they have their own bike. So now they're saying below Central Park, the bottom of Central Park, which is Central Park South, down all the way to the bottom of the
It
from
starts. It
Manhattan.
starts at 60th.
That's 60th.
Yeah.
That's where Central Park South is. All the way down Columbus Circle, essentially, all the way down. There's going to be a fee of $9. It was supposed to be $15, but she said she's saving you $6 by making it only 9. I'm like, that's like gaining 100 pounds and losing 50 and saying, look, you lost 50 pounds. It doesn't make any sense. But then again, I'll just say I've met her a few times and I'll just leave it at that. But it doesn't make sense. If you live in that area, and I have a lot of friends that live in the Village, that's a problem because you also paying, if you drive your car in and you own a car and you park it, and there's a lot of cars in New York City, don't let anyone tell you otherwise, and you park it in front of your apartment building, you're also charged an additional $2.50 for overnight parking. So if you think, well, I'll park it here, maybe stay in a hotel, and I'll go to work the next day, and I'll save money that way, no. It's going to cost you about $4,200 a year. So you go to your boss and go, hey, this is costing me money. I need $4,200 raise. Sure. And that's taxable, by the way.
Of course.
And not in New York City. When you live there or work there, you pay a New York City tax as well as a New York State
And of
tax.
course, your taxes are being used to help patrol those areas and for the infrastructure related to scanning the license plates and with the new signage,
People are
cameras.
I love it. They're scratching their plates,
I've
putting
seen people
middle
with
fingers over the
you
plate.
can replace one of the numbers with one of those like reflective things. So like
Yeah.
if you shine a light on the letter,
Yeah.
it actually like disappears.
I need that.
And so they'll take just one, and well, it's obviously it's illegal, but it is funny,
Well,
That's
people
like
are mad.
that's like the bikers with the flip up plates when they go through the tolls.
Right. But that's a lot of things. People are doing rotating license plates. They're using old plates that don't exist. I mean, that is typical New York, by the way. New York City is you beat the system.
Yeah, well, because
Dance in
it's
the
kind
gray areas.
yeah, it's kind of normal there because there's so many people and there's so many
There's a lot of things going on there.
inconvenient things over there, and yeah.
Well, I lived in the city for years. I'm glad to be out of Manhattan. I'd be out of New York State if I could.
I
But
hated driving in the city. Absolutely despised it.
yeah, well, the traffic is absurd. There's people from all over the world, so you got a lot of different driving styles, shall we put it
Mhm.
nicely. But the
Even the locals. Ah,
right, that's true. And the cabs, and it's
sorry,
absurd.
sorry for you people watching.
I have friends that live in Manhattan, and I feel for you, but taking mass transit
it's
is not an answer.
We had friends that lived in New York and never got driver's license specifically for that reason.
Well, they're going to nail you one way or the other. So if you decide I'm going to take an Uber or a cab or a Lyft or
Right,
whatever,
that charge is going
we're charging you as
yeah,
well. And
because-
those are actually have to be charged
Yep.
because so every time that car service, that cab, that Uber goes in and out across that barrier,
Yep.
$9 each way.
Yep.
It's absurd. And they get you on the weekends and they get you in the middle of the night. I mean, it's out of control.
Right.
But so what we're getting at with this whole thing, we're talking about one state controlling the laws for another, is not just in the Constitution, but it's also in the Federalist Papers,
Mhm.
which takes down and defines the deeper thoughts behind the Constitution.
Yeah.
But as far as how this impacts you and the auto industry, I think we're going to see a lot of changes under President Trump. I think that he's going to take away a lot of regulations. I think there's going to be a lot of hurdles to pass. We'll see what happens with Lee Zeldin getting into the EPA.
Mm.
I actually know him. You know him as well.
Mm.
We'll see Sean Duffy in charge of the Department of Transportation. I'm hoping to get a meeting with him because although I do like him, I don't know if he knows anything about cars. He may own a car, but I don't know if he knows anything about cars.
This seems to often be
They're
the
working on
problem, is
that.
you know, there are some people that do like cars. Like Trump is a car guy.
Oh yeah, he's got a
He's-
Ferrari going up at auction at
Mm.
Barrett Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, he participated in that episode of the Top Gear US, and like and he's got some very, very nice vehicles. He's got the car show every year at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know if it's every year, but he's got the car show at
Friend of
Mar-a-Lago.
mine, one of the head judges. Yeah.
And so he's into cars, but that doesn't mean he knows anything about what's going on.
In the industry side.
Yeah, like, and the deeper end of the industry side, you know, anybody that's in politics or business, you can only learn so much. You can only
You need
keep-
good advisors.
you only keep your eye on so many things, and that's why we, you know, obviously cars are our life. We focus in so heavily on this stuff, and we want to try to inform as many people as we can. You people watching and anybody who's in charge who can do something that, you know, we want to be able to save the industry, save jobs, and
Make it easier better for you
give better products for you as the consumer
that are affordable.
that's affordable and accessible and not restricting your freedoms.
Well, I think here's my crystal ball for 25. What we've seen go away, I think might come back.
Yes.
We should have a crystal ball here. I feel like I read it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm pretty accurate. That's the scary part. I think when they take away the mandate and the tax credit and all the restrictions on electric vehicles and let you make your choices, car manufacturers will then be able to make a profit. And what they took off their market, what they took off their menu essentially was entry-level vehicles that were around $20,000. The Kia Rio.
Mm.
Ford had the Focus. They got rid of that. And now even Jim Farley is talking about it. Actually, there was just at the Detroit Auto Show just before we filmed this. They showed only performance cars, and there wasn't a peep about electric vehicles. So a friend of mine asked, hey, what are you guys talking about electric vehicles? So we're not talking about electric vehicles. We're talking about performance cars today. They showed the GTD, which is a performance supercar.
Pretty much
Mustang.
racetrack for the road.
Right.
We got to see it before. It's really cool.
It's very cool. Yeah, we've seen it actually run at Goodwood Festival of Speed. You and I did a podcast on that. And then also we're seeing a lot of trucks. So trucks, we're seeing Von Gitlin Jr., who does burnouts and stuff like that. He had a version of a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder Mustang that was there. So you're seeing a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of off-road ability, people that want to do those things. Again, California is trying to limit the off-road ability. If they could stop Moab, they would. But I think we're going to see more entry-level cars coming in. I think we're going to see less high-end, fully loaded cars, which is what they've done. They've loaded up the high-end trim levels and pushing people to. We don't have that anymore. That only comes in the top trim level. We don't carry that low trim anymore. So I think you're going to see more of the entry-level trims.
Well, that's been a big issue. That's why so many cars are sitting on lots and
Right.
they're
Unaffordable
yeah, because nobody wants to go and buy an $80,000
pickup truck.
yeah, or like a Ford Explorer, which I think was a specific reference that we made in a recent video. Like, no, they want to get you have 5 kids or whatever.
Right.
Go get the base model, save some money.
Right.
Well, you can't do that.
You can't buy the
There's-
base model anymore.
Good luck finding one because they've only made a couple because
They want you to buy the loaded.
look, and there's a lot of really amazing features that are available on the base models now.
Right.
But not all the comfort stuff. But like do
You got to order them.
yeah, do you really need the leather seats over the cloth seats?
Yes.
Do you well, I like cloth seats.
I like leather, but either way,
But do you need the bigger screen? Okay, it's really nice. Is it necessary? Yeah.
no. And they're taking away things like navigation and all that.
Well, yeah, but you can get that through your phone now. I don't know if there's any vehicles on the road right now. I'd have to look into it. That does not have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Any mass market car, I should be specific.
There are actually, because General Motors doesn't offer Apple CarPlay unless you want to use the Bluetooth component of it. Because they're Google based,
Yeah.
so they're Android, which doesn't make sense because there are more Apple phones. You and I both run Apple devices. That's
Yeah.
all we have here. There's one other thing I want to say. Because we had softening in the interest rates, that doesn't happen like this for you and I. if you're looking to buy a new car, you're looking at interest rates, wait till the spring of 2025, depending upon when you're listening to this. But by the spring of 2025, you're going to see a couple things. One, lower interest rates, a lot of 0% financing, tons of incentives, because at that point, all of these $7,500 mandates are gone, tax credits are gone, and there's a ton of cars sitting on lots. And I don't mean like, oh, the car will sit 90 days, no big deal, we'll get rid of it. These are hundreds of days. In other words, a year and a half. Right now, there are 2024 sitting on the lots. I've heard of 2023 models sitting on the lot because either they're too expensive for that trim level, or they're stripped down and nobody wants them.
Or there's some undesirable car that
Or undesirable
anyway.
color. Right, yeah. So the fact is there are cars out there available that you will start seeing massive discounts on, and that's a benefit to you. So be patient. We're covering that also in an upcoming segment.
Yep, we got a lot of interesting stories coming.
Yep. And I highly suggest you subscribe, share this with your friends. If you get value from this, we appreciate you sharing it because we're trying to get the word out to help you make better choices, get better prices, and know what's going on. Like if you're thinking you need a car, well, I would wait till the spring because I think there's going to be some really good deals coming.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
Well, I hope that you guys have learned something interesting, and if you have, like, share, subscribe. We're gonna be like we said, coming back for more episodes, more short form produced news hits. So keep an eye out to see what's going on in the automotive industry.
Right. Car reviews live at Car Smarts, which is a YouTube channel. You can find all of it also on our website, Car Coach Reports. We also have content in Spanish as well as English. And we appreciate your comments. Last time there were some good comments. We tried to take in everything that you said that made sense.
Yep.
And we'll try not to talk over each other. That's just because we're related, and that's part of the
Yeah,
process.
yeah. The audio things will
We're working on it.
time. But
And it's not cold in the studio this time.
no, it's nice and warm. We got to
We
fix.
figured it out. Yeah. Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate your time.
You want to give your socials?
Sure, you can find me on all forms of social media at Lauren Fix and literally every platform.
You can find me at PaulFix3. I live mostly on Instagram. And you can, of course, check out all of the links below to see all the other things that we're doing. Lauren's on another podcast called Total Car Score. News hits all over the place, radio shows and
Content.
social and the book and all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
So please check that out. And we do look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for your time.